Back again. Only about 20 minutes the other day to work on the bevels on the Gladius. Got about 2/3 of them roughly hammered in, and see what I can do about finishing up here this afternoon. Already got it in the fire, waiting on it to get up the temperature. Should have some decent heat on it. Start roughing in these bevels. As soon as it starts to get to a dull orange, you want to put it back in the fire so you don't end up with stress cracks and things like that hammered into it. You work metals, especially high carbon steels, at too low of a temperature, and you're just asking for future failures. So I try to get it up to at least a good bright orange, pushing maybe a dull yellow to work it. And then as soon as it hits a dull orange, stick it back in the fire. It's important to know the metals that you're working with, temperature ranges that they work at, and what colors of metal those temperature ranges are. Same way with tempering your steel and hardening your steel. Most steels you can harden by bringing it up to a non-magnetic, which is your critical temperatures. Coloration may vary a little bit. I keep a large magnet on the side of my forge to check that. Hold it at that temperature for a little bit and then quench it. It's also important to know if the steels are oil quench, water quench, or an air quench. Now, these are things that I tend to look at when I'm working with steels, and since I run a coal forge and have pretty rudimentary tools, I tend to work with basic carbon steels, occasionally some of the tool steels. Spring steels are easy to work with, 5160 and things like that. Those are the ones that I work with most commonly. I can work, I use 15N20 for my layering on Damascus and forge weld and stuff like that when I want to do pattern welds. Or high tension logging cable. A lot of different things like that. Whenever you're doing forge welds, you want to make sure that both surfaces are pretty clean before you start to stick them in the temperature. Heat them up a little bit before they start to build scale. Flux them. I use 20 multene borax, and that way it helps cut it off to where oxygen doesn't get in there and create scale, which can cause your forge welds to fail. Alright, let's take another look. Got that side ready to work. When you're hammering in bevels, you want to alternate between the sides and try to keep them pretty even so that you're keeping your steel straight. It's not going all cattywampus, curling like a banana. When you're doing a single edge blade, you can actually take and come from the top spine of the knife, hammer a curve down into it over the horn, and that way when you start to hammer out your bevels on the edge side, we'll actually push the spine back straight. If you want to do a clip point, you'll hammer it out to a taper, push that taper down so that when it's laying flat on the anvil, your spine is up and pushes down into the anvil for your tip. To start to work the bevels, that tip that you hammered down and angle into the anvil will actually push back up and form that slight curve from the spine that creates your clip point. It's important also to know when to hammer hard, when to hammer light. You can work carbon steels at lower temperatures, but lightly, and all you're doing at that temperature is just planishing out some of the rough texturing. You don't want to do any heavy hammering at colder temperatures on those steels, because you're asking for failures. You're hammering in stress fractures and things like that that'll cause your blades to break on you later on. You do want to work fast though, and you want to make sure that your hammer is oriented properly, so that you're not going all cattywampus at odd angles and hammering in imperfections into the blade. I'm going to try to keep things roughly, nice and neat. It looks uniform, nice and straight. As you can see here, still got pretty straight edges, even with hammering in the bevels. I've cut it down from about a 1/4 inch thick steel to where it's going to be closer to an 1/8 inch on each side. Then I'll file in my plunge lines and run that little grinder to clean up the bevels, get any roughness out that I don't want in it, and then I'll go to work on the fuller then I'll harden it, and then I'll temper it back. Most of your swords are going to be tempered back more than your knives. Knives need to be a little bit stiffer than swords. Swords need to be able to flex and return back to trueness. So you're going to bring them back. Knives, you work to, you temper them, basically looking for a straw color. Depending on the metals, that's tempering at 400, 401 degrees. Roughly an hour, sometimes 1 cycle, sometimes 2 cycles. But it's best to know your steels and how to work them. It's real simple to find the information. Most of the time, manufacturers that you order steels from can send you that information and show it to you. I like working a coal forge, although there is some convenience with propane. I just like the old coal forges. Later on I will end up firing up the propane forge in some of the videos. If you notice things jump around a little bit and everything else, well, because I'm filming everything off my phone and don't have a whole lot of control over it when I'm across the room from it. But I'll continue working. Now, let me adjust it a little bit, get things back in perspective where we can see the anvil. There we are. Should have some good heat back on the steel. Ready to work at it again. Make sure that your hammer orientation and blows aren't rolling all over the place as you work. You want to end up working both sides. As it gets cooler, you can planish it out just a little bit, straighten it out a little bit. Notice they're lighter blows, not hitting hard, not trying to move a lot of the metal there, because you don't want to create stress cracks and fractures. But you do want to keep things trued up as nicely as possible. Most of the steels I work with are oil quenchable, and so that's what I work. That's how I quench them. Clips on my phone. Right now, I'm just trying to even out the width and planish out some of the rough marks. I don't have too many of them. That's something that you want to work lightly and go from there. As time progresses, I'll end up being able to do better videos, at least as far as video quality. Content will be a matter of opinion. But that's all I've got for today. I'm going to even out the Picasso area where it's going to be before the handguard, where it meets the tang, so it'll be the same width as the bevels that I've hammered in. As long as you get the metal up to good temperature, work it while it's hot, stick it back in the fire, and when it starts to get too cold, it'll move pretty fast. Y'all have a blessed day, and I'll see you around.